Oh, like absolute beginning of my career, useless, like a 2.
Right.
On ability, work ethic was probably more of a strength then, but on ability and actual sales skills, if you like, I was a 1 or a 2. Like I knew nothing.
How crap here are we talking?
Blissfully ignorant to how crap I was. There was long periods where we didn't sell anything. It was hard, really hard. You're tied to your desk. The time, how long you go for a wee, that beats you down. Every month or every quarter, there's a minute where I just think, I'm sick of this. Am I just going to be a postman?
Do you think you knew how bad you was?
There was a culmination of things that really, like a perfect storm, that really screwed with like mental health, whatever you want to call it. It wasn't even really a thing. And I really struggled. It was more than just work, but work was a big thing of it. And I remember like being at work one day and I actually went home sick.
Hello and welcome to another episode of I Used to Be Crap at Sales. I'm Mark Ackers, your host, the co-founder and head of sales at MySalesCoach. And today I'm joined by sales leader at Allego, a sales author, maybe co-author would be a fairer and more accurate reflection of the number one bestseller, Problem Prospecting. It's someone that I've worked with in 3 companies, arguably five. If you've not worked out who that person is by now, then let me introduce them. It's Stuart Taylor. Stu, welcome to the big orange chair in the podcast.
Thanks for having us, mate.
Good to have you here. Stu, let's kick off just with a yes/no question. Did you, at some point in your career, used to be crap at sales?
No. Probably the end of this interview, isn't it? Yes, of course I did, yeah.
Fantastic. How crap here are we talking?
Pretty shit. Blissfully ignorant to how crap I was. But looking back now, pretty shit, yeah.
Let's get into sales then, how you feel about sales. First of all, most people don't want to be in sales, right? They fall into it. But what about you? How did you end up in sales?
Like a lot of people, this is a common story probably for a lot of people here. I just fell into it. So I left school at 17. I went to do my A-levels, done some ridiculous A-levels. I done chemistry, physics, law, and IT, I think were the 4, and really struggled. Like I kind of blagged my way through my GCSEs and done all right. And then I realized how hard you had to work at A-level. And at the time, I was enjoying myself and having a good laugh. And I was playing rugby pretty seriously at that time as well. And my education suffered. So I left school and decided to do something different. I started working, I had various different jobs, which I don't know if you want to get into. But my first sales job, as I call it, was working for Barclays Bank in their outbound call center. So I used to ring people from 1 in the afternoon until 9 at night, selling them PPI, Martin Lewis, and all the other things that used to come with it. So I fell into it. I had a friend who worked there who was making good money at the time, and that piqued me interest. And I thought, well, I'll give it a go, see what happens. And 15 years on, or whatever it is, the rest is history.
So you fell into it, but it was a conscious choice to take that first sales role, I suppose. You're hearing the money that your friend's making. Yeah,
but if you said to me, like I think I was probably 17 then, or whatever I was at the time, I didn't really even understand what sales was. Like I had no idea what a professional sales career was. I was at that stage where I'd left school. I literally had 2 options. I come from Sunderland, so if anybody lives in Sunderland, like Nissan is one of the biggest employers in Sunderland, working in their factory, and they get paid well. And as a 17-year-old lad, I was looking to earn money, weekend millionaire, going out. I wanted a nice car and all the things like that. And it was either go and work in Nissan in a factory, or my mate was working in sales, making decent money. And I thought I was more naturally leaning towards doing that. It felt like the easier option rather than working in a factory in the middle of the night to earn money. So that was literally my options pretty much. It wasn't, but that's the part where I felt I was. And yeah, I applied for the job at Barclays and got to start there.
I was going to ask, what would you have done if you want to take the sales over? It sounds like, we'll obviously live in the Northeast and know about Nissan, so maybe working in the factory there.
I still don't think so. I think I would have always tried to do something else. I really didn't fancy working in a factory.
Right.
I just didn't appeal to me. No disrespect to anybody. I've got lots of friends who work in the factory and things. It just wasn't what appealed to me. I think if I didn't work in sales, I would do something with cars. My dad's a mechanic by trade. I think I'd have probably got a trade in either, being a motor mechanic or an electrician or something like that. I think that probably would have been the route I went down.
I could see you with cars based on what I know of you and obviously your love for cars, etc. I suppose we get to being a car salesman, but in between was our first job where we met was at Sunderland Football Club.
Yeah.
talk to me about how sales changed, and I'm going to do all three here, but from Barclays to Sunderland, Premier League Football Club, to selling cars. How did sales change for you across those three roles?
Oh, all very different. I think I changed sales at Sunderland Football Club a lot more than what it changed me. And I'll explain what I mean by that. Because I come from Barclays, where it was 200 calls a day on a dialer. You literally got a ping in your ear and you got the name of somebody and you had to speak to them. And that was it. And my job then was to sell them loans, insurance, whatever. You can imagine the catalogue of things that I was selling. So I didn't know anything else other than kind of high volume outbound. I walked into Sunderland Football Club and, the people who were there didn't have that same mentality. It was very much reactive. It was nurture your customer base and, wait for the phone to ring. And I come from a completely different world where I walked in and pretty much day one, I made 100 phone calls. And I look back now on people there who probably had quite a cushy job, been enjoying and probably thought, what on earth is he doing? Like, he's making us look bad because I just brought what I'd learned at Barclays, which was all I knew. I didn't know anything else. And I brought that into the football club. And I think I was hired for that, to be honest, to try and shake things up, because it was unusual for somebody from a call center background like I had to start working in the football club. But I was hired by two people who had, got a lot of advice from, Leslie Callahan and Christine Linden. And I think they brought me in to shake that up. They wanted a bit of that kind of hunter mentality to bring into the football club. So I think I changed that more than what it changed me. But alongside bringing that into the company, I also learned how to, have more long-term relationships, how to do face-to-face meetings, and all the things from a kind of relationship building, because it wasn't just purely new business there. It was, account management or whatever you call it as well at the football club. So I had a little bit of both. So very different in terms of the two.
So before you go into the garage then, what's interesting there is, I think, first of all, Barclays is customers. Sunderland, is it fair to say all fans you were calling up? Because I'm assuming you only called people up that you believe to be fans, and is that not different?
No, that's not true. No, so we would have it was businesses. So I sold hospitality and advertising to local business, well, not local businesses, just businesses in general. So it was a lot were fans. Don't get me wrong, there was Sunderland fans, but it was a lot of businesses that done it for commercial reasons. They might actually have a Sunderland fan who's one of their big clients, or they might use it for entertainment, hospitality, all those types of things. So while it is mainly true, it wasn't all Sunderland fans. And I also would just ring local businesses. Like, the most common thing I would ring and say, hey, Mark, it's Stu from Sunderland Football Club. The most common response I would get, I haven't got my boots, I can't play this weekend. Or you'd get a Newcastle fan who were like, don't ring me ever again. So it wasn't necessarily all Sunderland fans. We just used to ring local Northeast businesses. If I seen an article in the paper where a company was doing really well, I'd pick up the phone and ring them and see if they would come along to a game. So the majority definitely, but it wasn't exclusively people who were Sunderland fans.
Okay, fair enough. What motivated you to keep doing that? Because here's what I'm picturing. I know what that sales floor used to look like. You're sat there. First of all, I don't think it's unfair to say a lot of the people were a little bit older than you as well.
Yeah.
More experience, for example.
Yeah.
You're sat there. They don't have that work ethic or mentality. I appreciate you might have come in day one and gone, let's get to it. But 6 months, 9 months, 12 months in, I don't think they really changed with you, did they?
No, and I think maybe I changed as well. I don't think I constantly done that. I think when I first started, maybe I'd done that at a higher volume and a bigger degree. And I think part of it was the success, because I didn't have any clients. I didn't have any people that I could speak to. Right. I had to make some things happen. And then when I started to get some clients and I started to get more face-to-face meetings, I couldn't do that all the time. But what I did do was make a conscious effort where it continued always. It wasn't at the same volume or the same intensity as what it was when I walked in, but I always made sure that I did some kind of that outbound prospecting. Like, that's been the constant throughout my career, outbound. I've never known anything else other than outbound sales.
What about the car garage then? So you left Sunderland Football Club, you went to the car garage. That's obviously very different. Very different.
And again, I took what I knew best to the car garage, and I was seen as a little bit of an anomaly. I remember saying to my boss, a lot of the time, if somebody walks into the pitch, you have a conversation with them. That's it. I remember getting a customer list from my boss, who was the manager, and he was like, what do you want that for? And it was a customer list people who had cars with BMW already, they'd bought in the past. And I just went through ringing them, see how they were with the car. I'd run some dummy figures to you. Here, Mark, I've just had a look at your finance. You've had your 3 Series for 2.5 years now. Did you know we could get you into a brand new car and it might cost you £10 a month more, or it might cost you this or this? And like, that was the success I had in the car game. So again, I used what I knew best, which was the outbound, to bring it into the car garage. That was even worse received by the people in the car garage. Like, the car industry is very traditional. Like, I think people see me as a big threat in the car garage because I was doing something very different that they weren't. But then it was starting to be successful. There was about 10 or 12 guys And within 3 to 6 months, I was the second top performer in the car dealership. There's one guy who was a brilliant guy, but he'd been there for like 10, 15 years and he had clients always coming back to him. And it was difficult to get on par with him. But it's kind of people say in the motor trade, you need to build up your customers and things. And I just did something different. But again, it wasn't anything genius. It wasn't an idea I had. It was just the only thing I knew what to do was try and make something happen. So I brought that kind of mentality and what I'd done in the past to a different industry, and it worked pretty well.
But how did you know to do this? Because
I didn't have an option. I didn't really know anything else. I didn't really know anything else. And it was just an idea. I was thinking like, and obviously we've already touched on it. I was a big car fan. I love cars. I know people buy cars. And it just seemed crazy to me that people were sitting here just waiting for something to happen. But I was like, well, honestly, in the car game, like people would just play tricks and just have a joke around. And that was like 90% of your day. You'd be really busy towards the end of the month when you delivered cars. But on a freezing Tuesday morning or afternoon, you'd just be winding each other up and having a laugh. And that's what most people did. And I wasn't there for that. Like, yes, I'd have a laugh, and I've always felt like I'm part of the team and I'll have a bit crack. But I also want to make money. Like car sales, if you don't sell cars, you get paid. I think it's less than minimum wage. I don't even know if it's actually allowed, but I was paid something like 10 grand basic salary when I done that, and then you get bonus for selling the cars. So if you don't sell cars, you don't make any money.
I've never had a car salesman call me up. I mean, I've had one of my cars for maybe
ludicrous,
7-8 years.
Like every car dealership will have a list of people they've sold cars to, right?
Yeah.
Because they do. They've got those lists. They'll send them reminders saying your service is due. They'll send them this and that, but they never ring them and say, have you considered changing your car, Mr. Ackers?
No, that's what I mean. Like,
but that's what I mean. Nobody does it. And that was my one thing that made me successful.
So here's what I'm hearing though, Stu. It sounds like you were just really good from the off. Like Barclays, you had success there.
That's not true. I think Sunderland Football Club and BMW I was. Barclays, I was awful when I first started.
Well, how did you get from there to being good at Sunderland then?
It's like you set this up, but it was coaching. Like what Barclays did was give me coaching, but the coaching wasn't letting me think for myself. It was almost teaching me what to say and what to do. So it wasn't giving me the ability to kind of like make the decisions myself, but there was one lady at Barclays, called Michelle, and she used to like be always top of the awards and things and win everything. And I used to ask my team leader, like if we used to do team coaching sessions where we'd listen to calls, where we'd come, very rare, but again, and I'd ask if we could listen to her calls, and I'd ask if we could, and I listened to things that she'd done and just try to get better. But when I first started Barclays, I was really poor. Like the first 3 months or 6 months or whatever it was, like it was probably touch and go whether I passed my probation, because in truth, I pissed about. You used to go out all the time at that age. It was like a collection of 18 to 25-year-olds who, it was great fun, but then it come a point where I was like, what are you doing with your life, Stu? I've seen people who'd been at Barclays, and again, no disrespect to them, but people who are highly educated with degrees and God knows what, who'd been there for like 10, 15 years. And I was like, this isn't for me. Like, I need to knuckle down, get successful at this, and either try and move up and do something else in Barclays or go somewhere else and do something else. But I had to learn the hard way. When I first started Barclays, I was poor. Like anybody, didn't really have a clue what I was doing.
Do you think you, like, deep down when you look back at the point, do you think you knew how bad you was?
No, not a clue. Not a clue. I was an also-ran. Like, I was just one of the, most people were like that. That was just the majority. It was all kind of, the mentality was that it's a numbers game. Make more dials. You didn't have a choice. The dials were made for you, but get through to as many people as you can. If you get through to more people, then you'll ultimately get the result. And that was what Barclays focused on. They focused on like how long you went for a toilet break and how long your times were. Everything was controlled with those metrics. But where they dropped the ball a little bit was the improving the quality of the conversations. Like if they'd have put equal emphasis on the number of calls as they did the quality of the calls, I think that would have been a massive difference.
So how good do you think you thought you were in Barclays on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being excellent?
At the end, when I left, I thought I was a 10.
Okay, that's great. What do you think you were in this dark period at the start, though?
At the time, if you ask me to think back,
yeah.
Average, if 6, 7, I know you don't like people picking 7s, nor do I, but I was bang average, slap in the middle. I probably thought I was just normal.
And what, now you look back, what do you think you was?
Oh, like absolute beginning of my career, useless, like a 2.
Right.
The on ability, work ethic was probably more of a strength then, but on ability and, actual sales skills, if you like, I was a 1 or a 2. Like I knew nothing. even when I say I was a 10 when I left Barclays, really on sales skills, I was still a 2 or a 3 at best. But again, the work ethic and getting a little bit better, it helped me excel. But there wasn't that culture of coaching and getting better. The culture was KPIs and compliance. That's all calls were listened to for. It wasn't to try and help you be better at what you did. It was just to make sure you're compliant. So yeah, I was blissfully ignorant of how poor I was probably throughout the first 5, 6, 7, 8 years of my career.
A long time, that.
But the thing is, it is a long time. But I also think I'm fortunate because I think most people have 30, 35 years of the same year repeating itself, and they do that for all the career. There's a lot of people I speak to now, and I speak to sales leaders, and they'll say, "Oh, my team are too experienced." Those are the guys and girls who probably need it more than anybody because they are experienced because they've been doing it for 30 years, but they've probably never got any better. They've just been on deja vu, having the same year over and over again and done the same things they've always done. So yeah, I think that's a long time, but I'm fortunate that I realized it wasn't even me. This wasn't about me. I didn't realize it was really Refract when things started and we started selling to kind of VPs of sales in software. And I realized like how good some of those guys were and how seriously they took the art of selling. And that's the first time I really become, relatively proud about sales as a profession. But also I treated it as something, that I wanted to get better at and I wanted to excel at. And without starting work at Refract 8 years ago, whatever it was, I don't think I probably still would be treading water and doing the same things, in all honesty.
So it's obviously really humble the way you explained that. We definitely had a jump here in time. So we've had Barclays, Sunderland, the car garage. You then did get into SaaS.
Yeah.
And this is arguably the second business we started working together at.
Yeah.
Totally compatible. Then we had the test factory.
Yeah.
So you could count that as 1 or 2 businesses, right? But you're talking about the business after that, Refract.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about your entrance into SaaS and tech then, how long were you at Totally Compatible and Refract together? 3, 4 years?
Yes, between 3 and 4 probably,
3 and 4 years.
I guess.
So you're saying, even at that point, I know 3, 4 years, you were still crap.
I think so. Yeah, I think I learned a little bit more, about SaaS and maybe it's more the email side of things, as we can have a few jokes about and things like that. And I definitely improved, but I didn't accelerate it anywhere near the rate of what I did when I started Refract. Again, a little bit of that mentality. When I first started, I didn't know anything else. Picked up the phone and made some calls. And I did improve. And, I've said this to you before. My first day at Technically Compatible was like Disneyland. Like if you think of the industries I've been in, outbound sales, hospitality, and then selling cars, like they are 3 hard industries. Like, they don't take prisoners. It's like hire or fire mentality. You've got to get stuff done. And I had kind of just made stuff happen. I started in Disneyland and there was more support. I started in Technically Compatible and there was more support. There was more of a coaching culture. But I don't think really, even as a business, we truly understood or appreciated what coaching was and the impact it could have at Technically Compatible until we got to Refract and, we opened our eyes and seeing what impact it could have and the difference it could make.
How do you think you survived so long? In the sense of, when you look back now, you're saying, effectively, I wasn't very good, right, at sales for years we're talking about. You thought you were good.
Yeah.
But you look back now with everything hindsight's obviously a wonderful thing. How do you think you survived in those roles for so long not being very good?
The truth is, Mark, like not very good compared to what? Like compared to the population, I was bang average. I was probably a little bit better than most, if I'm honest. Like not blowing my own trumpet, but I probably was. But that was work ethic, whatever you want to call it. I can think quickly on my feet. We've discussed this before, but I've got that kind of let's get shit done mentality. Like I try to make things happen. And I think that's what got me through. But I wasn't very good, but it wasn't like my peers were all good. Like the average was, now I look back, really poor. It didn't take much to excel above that average. And I somehow managed to do that. So although I was poor, I was probably still better than a lot of people who I was working alongside. Certainly in, the first 3 jobs, I think the test factory was maybe more of a leveler, working with yourself and Technically Compatible and such. But yeah, it doesn't take much to stand out from the crowd. That's the uncomfortable truth for sales as a profession. The bar's really low. Like most sellers are poor. I get sold to, I coach people. I work in a sales organization. 90% of sellers are shit. All right. And that's a bold claim. And that's my experience. Because people don't treat it seriously. They don't listen to their own calls. They don't get coaching. They don't have a coach. They're not passionate about getting better. the average seller on the street is very poor.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's the whole profession. Maybe it goes back to the beginning where people fall into it. They don't really want to be into it. But I also don't think they realize what a fantastic career this can be. Like, it's afforded me some amazing opportunities, to work with people like yourself, to start to do other things outside of sales, obviously the money that comes with it and all those things. I think sales is that job where you don't know what else you want to do. Nobody really wants to be in it, and they don't really see what it could be. I think that's one thing. But I also think as leaders, whether that be organizations or sales leaders, we let people down. Like, I've worked with tons of people who had the right work ethic, who had the right attitude. We just didn't give them the tools to be successful, and they went on to do something else. They were let down because they weren't helped to be better. I think it's a big problem in our industry. I banged this drum as you have for a long time. People just don't get the support and coaching they need to be successful.
And what about you then? We're at Test Factory days here, Technically Compatible, and all before it. It sounds like you had a great coach at Barclays for compared to everything else. Possibly. Yeah,
Coaches, it's hard to say because I think a coach lets you, find your own solutions. I think I was more prescribed what to do. I think is like a script. I was, told what to do. So maybe it's a manager rather than a coach. I think a decent manager.
Okay, someone that tried to help you get better.
Yeah.
What about the rest? Up until that point, before you leave the Test Factory, who did help? Was this all just self-sufficient learning and luck and hard work?
I didn't really do anything though in terms of learning, Mark, in truth. Like, I didn't read sales books. I didn't listen to podcasts. I don't even know what podcasts are about them, but I didn't really do anything. The word you used earlier, which resonated with me, was survive. Like, a lot of my early career was surviving. How do I just keep the lights on? How do I get by? How do I keep a salary coming in so I can pay the mortgage or the rent or whatever it is? Like, that was the first big chunk of my career, 6, 7, 8 years, whatever it was. So I didn't really do anything, nor did I have a coach who did anything.
And I mean, it's obviously great that you're able to reflect back and be so open about it. Feels mad, doesn't it?
Crazy, man.
Your career, what was paying your bills, funding your lifestyle.
I said one thing to you about the car trade, and I tell everybody this, right? I think of things, like, I'm an overthinker. I think of things and I try things that's like just in my head. Like, everybody would walk on the pitch and they want a car, right? The pitch is just where all the cars are, and a person would walk in, and I'd walk up, and most of the salespeople would say, "Can I help you, Mark?" Initially, salespeople, customers are like, or prospects are like, it screams sales. They're like, "No, you can't. I'm just looking." That 90% of the time is what people said. So I just changed the question. I just said, "Hey, Mark, how you doing? What you driving at the moment?" And it just decreased. Like, people weren't as resistant to having a conversation with you. So I've always tried things, but that was just trial and error. Myself and little things like that. And that worked. And I used to get more conversations. And then people were like, "Stu just talks to everybody." Because I wasn't trying to sell them initially. I was just trying to see what they wanted. I was genuinely curious in what they wanted. And I love cars, so I could talk about cars all day. So it just changed that. And that was just me tweaking things that I always used to do. And, what worked, I'd stick with it and try and do it from there. But I never really had anybody saying, "Stu, you should do this," or "You should try that." My manager, all he would say is, "Get out there and talk to them." That's literally all you would get. There wasn't any, "Oh, you should say this," or "You should try that." Nothing like that. But,
so you've shared a lot about how you struggled in sales. What sort of a dark period for you? Like, when you reflect back during your time there where you're not having the success that you maybe want or need, you haven't got the support and guidance there, surviving being the word that we've used.
Yeah.
I've always admired you from like a mental headspace aspect. Like, you've always been mentally quite strong to me, an exterior person. But what about you? How have you found those areas in dark parts of your career?
Yeah, and I guess that probably is why I am mentally quite strong, or I do consider myself to be mentally quite strong. But that is something, like anything, I've worked on. Like, I think sometimes people think, you are mentally strong, or you aren't, or you are this, or you aren't that. And I'm not a believer in that. I think you can get better in anything. And I worked on kind of resilience, mental toughness to a lot. And I think it comes from a sporting background. Like, I said as a kid, I wanted to be a professional rugby player. I played rugby at a decent level for a long time. And that sporting background, instills that in you, that kind of mental toughness. But if I go back to Barclays again, like, there was a culmination of things that really, like a perfect storm that really screwed with, like, mental health, whatever you want to call it. It wasn't even really a thing then. Like, it was wrongly, it's great that it's more in the public spotlight, but I struggled. Like, I had a bad injury. I hurt my ankle, like, done the ligaments in my ankle, couldn't play rugby. I was working in what was a dead end job. Like, I was 2 or 3 months in, I wasn't doing particularly well. when you're not doing well in anything, you don't enjoy it. You know, like I said, I was an auto run. I was surviving, getting by. I split up with a girlfriend. Like a perfect combination of things happened when I was probably 18, 19. At this time, I'm trying to think of the timelines. And I really struggled. It was more than just work, but work was a big thing of it. And I remember like being at work one day and I actually went home sick. Like I said, I've got a really bad head. I just need to go home. I can't concentrate or anything. It was a bit of a white lie, really. I wasn't really sick. I got to this kind of point in my mind where I was just like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, what are you doing here? You're sitting, watching the clock, waiting for things, like waiting to go home or waiting to go for a pint or whatever it was after work. And I thought, what are you doing? Like, if you're here, like, do something with it. Like, give it a good go. Like, I've always been okay at most things, like turn my hand to things. I just thought, what are you doing? And that's when Barclays, where I give it a real good crack. Like, I had a good crack. And like I said, I started thinking, like, who is successful? Michelle, who I can't remember her surname. Michelle, who was there, was the top performer. I started looking at what they'd done. I started looking after myself as well. Like, this isn't a self-help podcast or anything, but I started going to the gym a bit more and I started doing things other than drinking all the time. And I turned the corner. But yeah, it was fucking really shitty, really hard. And I think, you know, being poor at what I did and being in sales was one of the reasons. And if I'm honest, I was looking for a way out at the time. I was looking at things I could do. What other careers could I do? What things could I do to get out of this? And I think I said to myself, you know, give it a fair crack of the whip, see what you can do with it rather than just walking out the door. Don't quit. See if you can be better at this, see if you can be successful and see where it goes. And I did. And, you know, I was successful at Barclays, like really successful. I won their Premier Club, as they called it. They took us to Las Vegas when I just turned 21, like taught us how to gamble on the strip and flew us down to the Grand Canyon and all those kind of amazing things. And I was massively successful. Like, but that was the turning point for me. But I still didn't really have a coach or anything. It was more just me thinking, what can I do? How can I try and get better? Kind of trying to take things on my own toes a little bit. But that was probably the darkest time I've had in sales, where I easily could have left and went and done something else.
How many times do you think you sat there thinking, can I just get home? Can I be sick? Can I make an excuse up?
Every day, multiple times a day. Like at Barclays, it was hard, man. Like really hard. You're tied to your desk. The time, how long you go for a wee, like it was really hard. You think I'm ringing people in the middle of EastEnders at 8 o'clock in an evening, trying to sell them a current account or a loan or whatever. You're getting sworn at all the time. Like people talk about cold calling now, B2B. I reckon in my professional career in software, I've heard of somebody being told to fuck off 2 or 3 times. Like, never personally, but I've heard of like people in my team, or not even now, they've been spoken down to. That was like an hourly occurrence, like working there. I had people say they were going to wait outside the building for me when I finished work because I like loads. That was just common though. It was just normal. Like, but that beats you down, you know. So you get those times where you're just like, hard, man.
I reckon if anyone did come and wait for you outside Barclays, they'd quickly change their mind.
Well, the daft thing is I didn't even know where it was. You know, I was in a call centre. I can imagine some bloke is probably waiting outside his local branch for me to walk out at 8 o'clock on an evening. So it never actually happened. But yeah, but that was really tough. Like, but I think going back to your point, like that's why I seen software as like Disneyland, because I'd been through that. I'd understood what a hard job was and almost like earned me stripes there. And then when I got something that was completely different, like I grasped it with both hands.
So it's interesting. One of the things I think I've noticed in my career is when someone's had a shitty job, they do grasp the SDR, the AE role differently. Yeah. And I thought a few times there are people that have come in, this is their first role, you don't know how lucky you are.
Yeah.
At the same time, you do get used to your climate, your customers. Let's talk about now in SaaS. Let's focus at telecompatible, Test Factory, Refract. Talk to me about, when I say to you, what was your darkest period across those 3? What would it have been?
See, I can't put my finger on like a dark period like that. Like it was tough. Like technically compatible, we come in and it was, I'm talking ground zero startup. Like the product wasn't finished. I was the first salesperson. Then obviously you don't get the details, but you come across as well. Like there was slide decks to sell the product from. It was really ground zero. It was tough. There was long periods where we didn't sell anything. And it was, but I think because I had such a difficult time, I always say to myself, like, well, you know, it's not Barclays. It's not making 200 calls a day and getting told F off every 5 minutes. So I haven't really had that dark period. But that said, I reckon every month or every quarter, there's a minute where I just think, sick of this. Am I just going to be a postman? I genuinely have those conversations, but I think that's what helps me knowing I've got a way out. And I know I have. If it really gets that bad, I can just do something else. Like anybody can. You don't have to do this. I do this and I know it's a conscious choice why I work in this profession, and I know it's tough and I know we're going to lose big deals and I know we're going to get hard times, but I make that choice. I'm not a victim of this. I made this choice. That's why I'm here. I have got a way out if I want it, but my mentality is like, I've made my bed, lie in it. Like, if you're really that bothered, do something about it, Stu. So I don't really feel like I've had those times where it's been that dark, but I think that comes from my mindset now of like, I'm not at war. I'm not getting shot at. Like, it's not life or death what I do. I think I probably detach myself from the outcome better than what I used to, and just realize I can do my best. I can control what I can, and the rest what will be. And because of that, I don't really think I've had that many dark days.
And you say even now though, every month, every quarter, you'll have that, what we're doing. Just go and be a postman as an example. What's happening to make you feel that way?
Could be many things. Good member of staff leaves. It could be you've lost a big deal you've been working on for 12 months or the team's been working on. It could be your targets increase and you think it's unfair. Like, the truth is, right, the only thing that's consistent in sales is you're going to get change. Things are going to change and you're going to get knocks. Like, that is just part and parcel of it. So I've just learned to adapt to them and just like suck it up, because I know I've always got that choice. If it's really that bad, Stu, do something else. Like, that's always in my head, and I've never got to that point yet. I might one day, where I just think, I've done this enough. I've done this 15, 20, 25 years, however long. That's it. I'm done. Check out. But at the minute, I'm fine. But there's constant knocks, and I think that's what you need to be aware. This career is never going to be smooth sailing. Like, it is going to be ups and downs. You've got to understand that, and if you can understand that, it helps you deal with it better. It's the people who come in and think, they'll swing for the fences and be great every month. Like, I've never met a seller, an honest seller, who says they've been brilliant month in, month out. Just doesn't happen. You rich people we work with, some of the best salespeople in my career, it's never all roses. You have bad moments. Things happen outside of life. The product might not be doing what it was. There's reasons why things won't be what they are, but you've just got to learn to deal with them and cope with them. And if you can, then that's how I think you're successful in sales. If I was having an honest conversation with anybody, if anybody's struggling with those ups and downs, then my go-to is, are you sure this is the career for you? Because that's not going to change. That's always going to be the same. Doesn't matter how good you are. I'm not the finished article, nowhere near. I'm still trying to get better. But as good as I might get, or I hope to get, I still know that in the future there's going to be peaks and troughs. There's going to be bad moments. There's going to be good moments. Like, that's sales. That's life. Like, just got to crack on, I guess, is the motto for me.
How real are those thoughts every month? If 10 is, I'm literally going to type my notice up, and 0
I've never
is,
typed my notice up, put it that way. So that might give you, that's a 10, I've never typed my notice up. And again, like, it depends on the month, mate.
Right.
On how big those knocks are. And sometimes it's cumulative. There's 2 or 3. They have a habit of being like buses, when you get bad news and it just hits you one after the other. And you just think, like, how real are they? Not very. I think it's just, I know I've got that exit door where I can do it if I want. So I don't think they are real. At Barclays, probably 9, a lot. Like, really thinking, what am I going to do? I remember when I was at Barclays, I looked at going to be a gas engineer. I thought, well, why don't I again, one of my friends was a gas engineer, he was doing pretty well. I thought I could do that. I looked and you could get like a 6-month intensive course or something to become a gas engineer. And I thought, well, why don't I do that? So it was real. I was looking for things. I can never say hand on heart I've went on the Royal Mail website and looked at being a postman. Or done anything like that. It's just kind of, it gives me that out if I need it. I hopefully never take that exit door, but I know it's there if I need it, if it gets that bad. And I think mentally that helps me cope with things, because I see it as a choice rather than being a victim of what's happened.
Tell me this is unfair. It feels like it could be linked, that the longer you've been in sales, the better you've got at sales. When you were crap, it was a 9 out of 10, this isn't for me. As you've got better, maybe it's not as real. Do you think those feelings are linked to going from being crap at sales to being where you are now?
The truth is, you've got to go through those hard yards to get good and get competent. And I think when you're good and competent at anything, you enjoy it more. It's just natural, isn't it? If you're good at something, you enjoy it. I think, and that's why it's so important that sellers try and get better, because once you do get good at it, you can enjoy it way more.
And is that linked, though, to wanting to be in the profession at all? Like you say, number of times people...
It's taking pride in what you do, isn't it? It's not being embarrassed about what you want to do. If you're a solicitor or you're a doctor, you want to be the best, don't you? Like they'll do courses, they'll want to learn from the peers. Like that is the norm in other profession. They'll have a coach, they'll get support, they'll have a professional qualification. But the majority of sellers have nothing like that. Like I think if you hand on heart ask most salespeople, a lot of them would have some level of embarrassment about their profession. Wrongly, in my opinion, because it makes the world go around selling things. But I think a lot of sellers, especially maybe junior ones, who are early in their career, would have an element of embarrassment because they feel like they didn't know what they wanted to do when they were growing up, or the path didn't work out the way they want, and they ended up in sales. I don't know, you've had more of these conversations, but I can imagine you haven't had many conversations with people who have made the decision to want to work in sales. Who grows up thinking I want to be a salesperson? Like nobody. But we need to change that stigma, because you and I and plenty of people we know, like it's afforded us amazing careers. We've done really well out of it, financially, but also from an enjoyment point of view. It is hard, right? But it's great as well. Like honestly, I think I'd be bored as a postman just doing the same thing day in, day out. Like if I truly think about it, or if I was working behind a computer doing admin or whatever, I'm just not that person. I'd be bored. So arguably the bad days and the hard things make the good days better.
So what we're building up here then is the better you get at sales, the more committed you are to sales, the better you'll be mentally prepared to deal with sales. Let's talk about where you were crap then and what you did to develop it. So let's pick the SaaS part of your career. That's where most of our listeners will be. You're at the test factory, or maybe even early stages of Refract. What were you crap at?
Everything. Like in terms of sales, like everything from particularly like demoing, I think was the big thing. Discovery and demoing, the two big things, especially if, like you say, in SaaS, like at the test factory, my demo would literally be a deck of slides, which I'd just press the arrow key and talk through it. This is the test factory. This is how amazing we are. Here's all the clients we work with. I didn't really ask any questions. I just kind of put up and showed up and hoped that something would resonate with a prospect, and they had a problem big enough and they're seeing how we could fix it. I wasn't actually trying to find out what customers needed, what help they needed. I just used to go through a slide deck almost on autopilot. And then I don't know when the point was, but at Refract, when we started, we had the luxury of analysing sales conversations from a lot of organisations, a lot of sales leaders who were passionate about development and coaching, and just kind of through rubbing shoulders with us, it kind of rubbed off, and I was like, shit, we're doing a lot of things wrong here. There's a lot of things we can do better. And genuinely, that was like, it was like a eureka moment. Like it was like, I've been doing this all this time, really shitty and done all right. Like, what can we do if we actually get serious about this and try to get better? And that was the big thing when we did that and started to get better. And I don't think Refract would have survived. And I'm not just saying me, I'm like everybody at the company, if we didn't have that mentality about trying to get better at what we did. We like went head to head with some big, well-funded competitors. And one of the common themes we always used to get was, we outsold them, or we did a better job through discovery and those type of things. And that was the only way we could win. We couldn't outspend them. We couldn't have better marketing. Arguably we couldn't have a product that did everything they did because of the budgets they had. So we had to find a way where we could try and beat them, and it was by outselling them. And that was from realizing how shit we were, but also seeing what that opportunity was. The good thing about realizing how crap you are is realizing how good you could be and what the opportunity is there. And I think we realized that. And then we just lived and breathed coaching. Like, we done coaching sessions all the time. I listened to podcasts. I read books. Like, I just become quite obsessed with it, about getting better, certainly for the first 2-3 years. Like, we lived and breathed it, and that's all I did for 2 years. And like, I learned more in that 2-year period than what I did in the previous 7 or 8, tenfold.
That is mental.
Quite as well, but that's the point that I'm saying to you before. Like, I feel most people in sales just live the same year over and over again. They never really get any better. They never really change. They do what they've always done, and they get by. They survive, but they don't realize what kind of that potential could be. How good could you be if you really took this seriously and took pride in it? But again, I'm convinced it's anecdotal, but from my personal experience, 90% of sellers, unfortunately, are in that category.
So are we saying then you're 9 years into your career when you've started to have a couple of years of coaching and had that impact?
I'm on 9 years. If you take it all the way back, so I'm 39 now. So yeah, probably about 9-10 years, something like that.
So 9-10 years until you started getting the coaching.
Yeah, the first real coaching was at Refract.
Yeah,
that was when I got real consistent coaching.
And just talk to me then about the impact that had on you to today. If you didn't have that moment, let's do a sliding doors moment. We all know what you've gone on to achieve since. Sliding doors moment, you didn't get that realization that you were crap. You didn't realize, wow, actually my demos are poor, my discoveries are poor. No one helped you. There wasn't a coaching culture. You didn't listen to calls. You didn't have a coach. Sliding doors moment, really hard, but where do you think you are today? What's that journey been like?
Amazing. Like the things I've done, like you said.
No, the other way, Stu. The other way. You didn't
No,
have it.
I mean, it's amazing what I have achieved, but if I didn't, like trying to cast my mind back, like it's been amazing what we have done. And I dread to think, because I feel like I probably would have been in some mid position still demoing some software in a very similar way, getting by. And I've got friends who are in the industry who are a similar age to me who are still pretty much doing that. And, still in that rut of just doing the same things and just surviving. So I don't think any of those things that I've, been fortunate enough to be involved in would have been a reality without that, because it opened my eyes to what's possible. Like I say, it was that eureka moment. It was like, shit, there's so much more we can do with this and so much more we can get involved with. And without that, like you say, it's a guessing game, isn't it? But I don't think any of that would have been possible.
Yeah, I don't disagree. It's hard to imagine. Obviously, we're still learning. Like you're getting your coaching now. You're getting the help. I want to hear about one deal that bothers you still. That you feel, I know there'll be a few, right? But
what are you trying to say, Mark?
I just know sales, right? But if I said to you, there's one deal that you lost that really bothers you, and you feel like you could have done better, what deals?
Like if you say I could have done better, all of them. Do you know what I mean? Like I've never ran a perfect deal. I've never ran a perfect discovery. I can definitely do better in all of them. But any that bother me, like I can't really hand on heart say some that really bother me. Your mind immediately goes back to the big deals that you've lost. One that actually I've got one now where there's a company based in the US, and at the time it was Refract, and it would have been a huge deal for us. It would have been, I don't know, it was something like a quarter of our MRR. They were an outsourced sales agency. And I felt like I'd done everything right, and I felt like there was a connection. I felt like you get a hunch as a seller. I didn't do everything right, but I felt I'd done a lot right, and we were getting in a good position. And they just went radio silence. I never heard anything back, and I didn't for years. And then later on down the line, this company acquired one of Refract's customers. All right. So I actually emailed the guy who I was dealing with, was the co-founder and CEO, and I was like, "Oh, I see you've acquired such and such. It's good to finally have you part of the Refract family." And he messaged me back saying, I think my subject line was blast from the past. And I said, I don't know if you'll remember me. He emailed me back saying something like, of course I remember you. They're probably one of the best salespeople I've ever spoke to. To be transparent with you, you were never in the running. My good friend was CRO or something of this company. We were kind of using you as a benchmark, as a comparison tool. So that's the one that's always stung, that got away. And that bothered us for ages. And then I actually got a conclusion to the story at the end. And we're actually speaking to them about potentially becoming a customer now. But yeah, that one definitely stung at the time, because I had a hunch that we were getting somewhere. But little did I know that I could never actually win that.
Feels like that was largely out of your control then, like never in the running, so to speak.
Yeah, I think so. I didn't know that at the time, though. I've only now found that out. Like, I'm talking 3 or 4 years down the line, so I didn't know that at the time. Yeah. And I guess most sellers wouldn't. But that is the truth of a lot of deals as well. Don't beat yourself up, because a lot of the time you maybe weren't really under serious contention anyway. They might have the chosen provider already, or the CEO's got a friend, an exec sponsor who they used to work with. Like, that is probably more true than what we ever realize. It's not all on you. There's so many different factors outside of your control as a seller that can impact the result, and that's a prime example. But at the time, that stung. That was a hard pill to swallow.
I bet. So today, obviously, you're a sales leader, but you still sell, don't you?
Yeah.
If I was to say to you now, scale of 1 to 10, 10 being elite, how would you score yourself as a seller now?
8.
Why not a 6 or a 7?
Because I think, again, depends on what I'm comparing myself to, doesn't it? I think I'm better than average. I think a 7's a pretty average number. I think 6 is probably a little bit below par. So I think I'm good. I think there's people way better than me. There's people elite. I don't think anybody's ever a 10. So I don't think you'll ever be a 10. You know, the day you're a 10 and you think of the finished article is the day you're going backwards and slipping. So I think an 8's a fair representation of where I am now. I think I'm better than a 6 because I've worked hard. You know, I've put 8 years into this now of learning, coaching. I also coach other people. Like, there's no better way of coaching yourself somehow by coaching other people. Like, it's a selfish thing, but I learn tons by coaching other people, and you get so much from it as well. So yeah, if I picked a number, I'd say I'm solid 8.
What are you still crap at today that would make you a 9?
Everything. Like, not crap at, it's marginal gains for me. I don't think there's one real area where I think if I could just do that, I'd be a 9. Like, I think I can get better in every area, whatever that might be. Like, everything can always get better. So I don't think there's one area where I think I'm shocking at that. I think there's just each individual area can always get a little bit better.
Give me one area though. The one, if I could give you the silver bullet to improve one thing.
Discovery. Like, I think a discovery is everything for me. Like, that's as close as the silver bullet you'll get in sales. If you can become really competent at discovery and get better at it, then I think that helps every other area. If you've done a great discovery, the demo is easy, isn't it? Like, it's a piece of cake. If you know what somebody's problem is, the demo is just showing them the good news. You know, I know you've used this on LinkedIn, and I use Richard Hammond instead of, you know exactly what I'm going to say now, don't you? But there's the Jurassic Park moment where they drive up in the car and it's Richard Hammond, isn't it? Is that right?
No, Richard Hammond's Top Gear.
Richard Hammond's Top Gear.
John Hammond.
John Hammond, that's the fella.
Played by Richard Attenborough, which might be.
That's why I'm confused. There's too many Richards. So he drives them up in the car in the kind of convertible 4x4 and shows them those brachiosauruses or whatever they are in the field. Like, that's your demo. It's the wow moment. Like, that's what you want in your demo. They were archaeologists who dug dinosaurs up all their life, like dreaming of probably seeing one. He's just shown them what their dream is. That's what your demo should be. The discovery is all the bit in the background, trying to find out what the challenges are and then showing them that wow moment. But most people don't do that. The demos are just a harbour tour or a training session of everything in the platform, and your prospects are asleep. So if I could get better at anything, the short answer is discovery.
So yeah, obviously I think that's a great analogy. Like you said, I've shared it before, and I think you're right. He takes these two archaeologists straight to the dinosaur. Only after do you get that moment where he stands up, twists their head, shows the dinosaur. Yeah. Only after that do they go to the lab. Do they get the instructions of how we do it, the DNA. Only then do they see the eggs and the dinosaurs. Start with a wow.
Exactly.
Okay, so discovery, what we're looking to improve more than anything. What do you do on a regular basis to try and improve your discovery?
Oh, all sorts. We've literally this morning before this session done, we call it getting to pain. So we've just done as a team, the account executives, we've just done role play sessions where we time each other. In a role play session, you've got to try and get surface level pain, business level pain, and a personal pain. So in a role play, and we time each other, and there's a record, it's 3.5 minutes. One of the team have got personal, business, and the 3 levels of pain in 3.5 minutes. We role play that, and we go through and try and get to pain and role play it. We listen to calls. We got podcasts. We obviously, big advocates of MySalesCoach. Everyone in my team, myself included, have got a coach from MySalesCoach. You know, Nigel, my coach, is awesome. So you name it, we do it. Like, hopefully the team, we all encourage extracurricular things, reading books, podcasts. There's budgets there for people to spend money on books and podcasts and stuff. Like, you know, any more ideas, I'm all ears, but I feel like we do a hell of a lot to try and improve because we understand like what difference that can have.
What impact have you seen all this happen on sellers in your team?
Loads of people, like 2 people immediately spring to mind, completely different ends of their career. One person in particular went from 2022 to making something like less than 10 grand commission. And this last year, 2023, they've made closer to 60 or 70,000 pounds commission. Like that's the difference. And I think one of the big things is coaching, how to run a deal better, and all the things that come with that. Again, marginal gains every area. Like that's like life changing for somebody. You know, somebody in the early 20s, mid 20s like that who's going to achieve that. We've had people who've come to us where it's maybe their first job, and you know they don't know where they're going. A little bit like I was, and we've given them coaching and feedback and helped them get better. And they've got gone on to have amazing careers and achieve things that probably they never really thought were possible as well. So it's probably the most satisfying part of my job at a Lego, but also outside of the Lego. You know, I coach people myself, and I do that as a consultant. It's really satisfying seeing somebody get better, start enjoying things, start to make more money, start feeling better about themselves, and probably seeing what I see in terms of like how good this career can be. Like, that's probably the most satisfying part of my job, and it's why I'm so passionate about being a coach, receiving coaching, and everything that it brings. So it's class. It's definitely one of the highlights of, you know, this job and why I do it.
So I want you to imagine, therefore, that someone's listening to this podcast. They are you 15 years ago in sales. They think they're good, but they're not.
Yeah.
They're definitely struggling. They're contemplating taking time off to be sick just to get out of it. They're thinking about being a postman. What would you say to that person?
Just stop and assess and give it a real good crack. Like, have a go, set yourself a time period and give it a go, which is what I did. But get help. Like, it's amazing how many people will ask you will help you when you ask for help. Like, get a mentor, get a coach. There's your scholarship, which is amazing. People can apply for and get a scholarship if that's still open. I don't know, timestamping this interview, but there's things like that you can do. You know, LinkedIn now, follow people on LinkedIn, listen to podcasts. You don't necessarily need a coach to get started. You can do that yourself. YouTube videos, there's so much advice out there, but do something. Like, just understand where you are, listen to your own calls, coach yourself, and realize the things that you can do better, but do something. Don't just tread water. Don't just continue doing what you're doing now, because you will either leave, or 12 months down the line, you'll be in exactly the same situation as what you are now, feeling fed up. So just take action, do something, and try and get better. And, you know, hopefully, I'd be confident if you do all those things that it'll help you be happier about your job, be more successful, and, you know, in a better place.
So early on, Stu, you talked about how many people in the profession of sales are embarrassed to be in sales. Do you feel like sales is a profession to be proud of?
Yeah, now I do, 100%.
What changed?
Taking it more seriously, realizing, you know, the things that can afford you, and taking pride in it and what I do, and seeing, you know, the impact it can have on people's careers, change people's lives. You know, like, it genuinely can, especially software. Like, it can be really lucrative. You can make a lot of money in software sales if you get really good at it, and it can change people's lives. You know, now it's all about my kids. I'm trying to, you know, do things that so they can have the life that I couldn't have, and being a salesperson helps me do that. Good salespeople will earn more than doctors and solicitors, and that's the truth of it. If you get really good, you will earn more than most professional people out there, and gives you that opportunity. But it's more than just the money and the earning. It's a really good career. It's hard, but the ups are really high, and you meet great people. And yeah, I'm super proud of what I do now. I don't have any qualms about telling anybody what I do if they ask.
Would you do it if the money wasn't there?
Or would you do anything if the money wasn't there?
No, let's just say it was an average salary.
Would I do it if it was an average? It's a really good question. I've never asked myself that. Would I do it if it was an average salary? As opposed to what? Like, yes, I think I would, because I don't know anything else and I enjoy it. Like I said to you, I don't think just putting mail, I'm not trying to underestimate, you know, the importance of somebody's job, but like putting mail through somebody's door every day, or data admin, or whatever that might be, I just don't think that's me. I need something to get my teeth into and work towards. So I think I would, because I don't think I could really do much else. I think I'd get bored doing most of the things.
Remind me again, what did you study at college? Criminology?
Law, physics, chemistry.
Did I say criminology?
Yeah.
So chemistry, law, and physics. I want you to imagine in sort of 15 years' time, whatever the time frames would be, your daughters have got qualifications in those things. So chemistry, physics, law. And they say to you, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go and get a job as an SDR. What would you say?
I'd be totally behind it. Like, me and Leanne, my wife, always have this conversation. What I want to do is give my girls the opportunity to do what they want and what they enjoy. And if that's what they feel they naturally want to do and that's what they'll enjoy, then I'd be 100% behind it. Like, I don't want to push them. It's a little bit now, the 3 and 1. Like, I've got a while yet, but like, I don't try and push them into things. Like, Sophia's had swimming lessons, dancing lessons, horse riding. Like, I've tried to give her the opportunity to do various different things to see what she enjoys. And I think it'll be the same in their career. I'll give them advice and pros and cons of both. You know, and that would be if she wanted to be a doctor, a rocket scientist, or an SDR. Like, I think I'd try and give her an objective view of what that career is going to entail so she can make her own informed decision. But I would never try and push her one way or the other. I'd help her and support her to be the best SDR she could be. I feel like that is what I want to do, whether or not it actually comes out when they are that age, but that's certainly what I would hope that I would do in that situation at that time.
I love that. I feel like you've answered a lot of my sort of ending questions around what advice would you give to people not fulfilling their potential. I feel like I know the answer. If you were to start your career again, would you work in sales? I feel like it's a resounding yes. So let's bring this to an end, Stu. I think this has been an amazing interview. Really, really appreciate how open you've been, how vulnerable you've been, just how honest in general. I've really enjoyed the chat. I'm going to sign it off with, if there's one person you'd like to see on this podcast, the I Used to Be Crap at Sales podcast, and hear their story, who would that be?
Yeah, I knew this question was coming and I'm still struggling for it for some reason. Who would I like to see on this podcast? Darren from Recite Me.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
So obviously no one listens to this. Well, very few will be able to point together why so that'd be interesting. Why have you picked Darren?
Because I remember you went to work with Darren, and Darren was CRO or VP of sales when we were back at the test factory, and the company he's working for was smashing it, doing really well. I remember you used to see Darren there and see obviously how successful they were, and it was kind of like Darren was doing really well and where a lot of people wanted to be. Obviously you work with him. I've been fortunate enough to work with Darren as well. I ended up selling Refract as it was then to Darren and things. I'd be interested to see. I don't even know. He might say he wasn't shit at sales. I don't know. I'm just making that up, but it'd be interesting to see his take on things.
Okay, so I do you know what it is? I'd love the idea of this, and he's based in the North East, so I could get him in the orange chair. I want you to look into that camera there and tell Darren, because I'm going to send this to him, this clip.
Yeah.
Right. Tell Darren why he should come on this podcast.
Darren, I'd like to see you on the podcast because I'd love to hear your story. I'm a big believer that everybody had a starting point. You've had a really successful career, and I'd like to get a bit more insight into it and see you in this orange chair with Mark.
Stu, thanks very much for coming on the I Used to Be Crap at Sales podcast. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thanks for having us. Cheers, mate.